welcome to this lecture. So in the previous lecture we implemented couple of these function, that is set Mario to middle image and to small image and big image. So next thing what we want to implement is this timer between these two times. So let's define that here. Define timer between these, and this would be these two times. So these two times are basically the start time here, start time, and end time. Let's get that and define this function. So basically it will check if the timer is at the right time for the action, and it will also reduce the ugly code here. So first we'll say if the self dot current time minus, it should be minus self dot transition timer. If it is basically greater than or equal to start time, that is our start time. And similarly, let me put and here because we want to check another condition, that is self dot current time minus again the transition timer. Self dot transition timer is now less than end time. So basically this is the boundary here. So if it is true, then just return us a true. So basically it shows the timer between the two lines, that is the start time and end time. So we have implemented this function too. So next, the last thing that we want to implement is definitely we have some function here left, so that would be changing to small. So if you are big and you just hit basically by the enemies, then you only just change from big to small. So let's create this function now, the last functions of our mario.py, and that should be changing to small. So this basically this changing to small function will track this Mario state and animation when he basically this Mario shrinks from big to small after colliding with the enemy. So for that we'll just have this bunch of a code that will check the hot, invincible, and transition state. So let's get into it. First check this transition state and just make it true. And self dot, we have something that is hurt, invincible, should be also true. This is to basically track if we collide with the enemy or not. So if we collide, this should be false and we should change from big to small. So we'll say that is self dot state. The state would be c dot big to small. Let me say it should be c dot big to small here. And after that what we're gonna do is I'll do a couple of things here. That will be just checking if our Mario is basically facing to right or not, and if it is facing, then we'll just create this frame, and this frame is basically a list here, and this will contain self dot right facing, and this is big normal frame first, and that is basically 4 here. And similarly I'll say now right facing normal frame at position right, say right, and it should be big normal frame at 8, and similarly we have now a small frame to add. So that would be right here and small normal frame at 8. So this is our frame, that is, we just maintain this frame now. And else what you're gonna do is we'll just create another frame here. Let me say frames instead of frame. So this frame should be also as a list, and in this we'll set that is self dot left big. Now just use this big normal frame, and that should be left here. So that means if it is facing right, just get this right frames, and instead it just get that left frames. So we can just copy this all of this code and just paste here, and just instead of right, what you can do is we'll just here put here left, and again left here, and the next one will be also left, and the position here will be 4, 8 and 8. So next thing what you can do here is, after this we are going to check again for this timer, and that would be age self dot transition timer is equal O. That means we have to just set this transition timer obviously to this current time. That should be self dot current time. And after that we'll just check again for the condition, that is if this self dot transition, that should be current timer, I'll say self dot current timer minus here self dot transition timer. So we'll get if it is greater, basically first let me say if it is less than, and we'll just deal with the greater than. So let me say 260. If it is less than 260 or 265, then what you're gonna do is we'll just set the image that is from this frame, and that should be frame, and just reference here, this should be frames, and reference here O. So next thing what you're gonna have is we'll just make here hot invincible, and this is the function basically, and this hot invincible will just make another, that is check function here, and we'll just implement that in a bit. And the next will be just adjusting our rect. So after that what you're gonna have is we'll just copy this bunch of a code again and just paste it out here, and instead of this 265 or less than 265, we'll just check if it is less than 330, and in this image we'll just add the frame 1, and we'll also check if it is hurting the invincible, basically if it is colliding with the enemy, and we'll also just call this adjust rect. So after that we'll just add it again, and we'll say it should be 395, and in this should be frame 2, and just check the invincible again and just rect again. So let me paste it again, and in this time it should be now less than 460, and if it is the case, then what you can do is we'll say again just put frame 1, and next thing is basically the last one here. So that would be 525. Now it should be 2 here, and now it's time to implement more. Let me just copy it 1 time, 2 time, and last here. So this should be 590 here, and the frame in the 590, let me just put here 1, and after this we have 655, and let me just put it frame as 2, and finally 720, let me say after there is this transition difference, this frame would be 1 here. And now what you're gonna have is a bunch of an attribute here, that is self dot adjust rect, and similarly in transition state that should be here self dot in transition state should be now false. And next thing would be the state now. So what should be the state? So state should be self dot here state should be defined as c dot walk now. So this should be the walk state, and now self dot big should be false. And similarly the transition timer should now again be something that is 0. So let's roll back that transition timer to be O. And next thing would be hurt invincible timer, that is this hurt invincible, and it should be timer here. Timer would be O, and next thing would be self dot become small. So let's call that become small now. And next thing what we're going to implement is this hurt invincible check function. So let's implement that. So we'll implement that is hurt invincible check in here. So let me just define that function. That would be hurt. Let me just copy this, all of it, and just paste it here. And here just give here a self, and what you're gonna have here is basically it makes Mario invincible on the fixed interval. So let's define first if it is the basically hot invisible timer is 0 or not. So if it is 0, that means if this hot invincible timer is equal 0, then just assign this hurt invincible timer as in current time. And we have elif here, elif condition, and in this elif condition we'll save the current time, that is this current time minus self dot hurt invincible timer, and just give a fixed interval here is in 35. Basically if it is the less than 35, this interval, that is the invincible time interval, and this current time is basically this 35 is in a millisecond. So what you're gonna have is we'll just call this image, that is set image dot set alpha. That means just make this transparent. So next thing what you're gonna have is we'll just check again the one more condition, that is this self dot current time minus and self this should be hurt invincible timer is less than 70. Then we'll just set the image alpha through this function, that is alpha function, and just pass here 355. It should be 255. And next thing what you can have is we'll just tell here that is a hurt invincible timer should be now again the current time, that is this timer should be again this current time. So this is our basically hurt invincible check. And let me see here again, and I think we have implemented all of these method in this mario.py. So this will be all the code in this mario.py. So we'll just make use of it and all the other components in this level1.py. And before that we have to make some other components like bricks, and we also have something that is coins and enemies. So that will be in this component sector, that will be in this component directory, and that will be implemented in upcoming lectures. So see you there.